The skies above planet Ilthan burned red as another city fell. The alien alliance made of 21 species was losing. Not because they were weak, but because their enemy was something else entirely. The Zarkith swarm did not stop, did not speak, and did not fear anything. Planet after planet, system after system, they advanced like a flood of teeth and fire. General Thorak of the Valari stood on the edge of the command deck, staring at the crumbling world below. His fingers trembled near the edge of the screen. He had seen wars before, but nothing like this. Half the council was gone. Entire planets now floated in space as ashes. And the worst part, no reinforcements were coming. They had sent the call across the galaxy weeks ago. Every known species, every corner of known space. But the humans, the newest species on the council, had stayed silent. No word, no ships, no answers. Some laughed at their absence, others called it cowardice. But Thorak just wondered what they were waiting for. Commander Jila of the Varn fleet walked in, her silver armor stained with soot and blood. "Sir, we've lost Sector 12. The swarm bypassed our lines. They're heading to the core worlds now." Her voice didn't shake, but her eyes did. Everyone knew what the core meant. If they reached the core, it was over. Thorak turned from the screen and said, "Call them again. Earth, send the signal direct. Beg if you have to." He didn't care about pride anymore. He cared about survival. He had seen what human warships did during peace exercises. Their weapons weren't just advanced, they were terrifying. Their soldiers didn't just fight, they dismantled threats. But Earth didn't reply. Not at first. 3 days passed. 4 more battles lost. The swarm reached close to the home system of the oldest council race. Desperation became the air everyone breathed. Even the bravest captains were now silent. Then on the 5th day, a signal came. It wasn't long. Just 4 words. "We are coming now." Every officer who saw it stared in silence. No coordinates. No demands, no countdown, just a promise. Many thought it was too late. But not Thorak. He had seen their drills. He had watched their training footage. And he had read the human histories. Wars ended in days, rebellions crushed in hours. He only hoped it wasn't all talk. 2 hours later, the first human fleet arrived. No banners, no greetings, no delays. Just steel and blue lights. Massive warships shaped like blades cut through space and went straight for the swarm. The swarm didn't react like usual. It paused. For the first time in years, it actually stopped and scanned the new ships. Then came the sound, deep, echoing. Mechanical. It wasn't a language, it was warning. The human ships launched thousands of drones, each armed and fast. In seconds, the drones reached the swarm front lines and exploded with energy blasts never seen before. Swarm creatures were torn apart mid-flight. Their dark shells cracked like paper. General Thorak stood frozen, watching it all in real time. The humans weren't defending. They were attacking with brutal precision. Ship after ship moved like they had studied every pattern of the enemy. Their main weapons weren't beams or missiles, they used something else. Something that bent space around the swarm, crushing it without a sound. Jila gasped beside him. "Sir, they're winning. They're actually pushing them back." Her voice was full of disbelief, but her eyes burned with hope. For the first time in weeks, someone pushed the swarm backward. Not held them, not slowed them, pushed them, and the humans didn't stop. They didn't even respond to hails. They moved from system to system, cleaning out the swarm with no ceremony. Wherever they went, silence followed. Ruins turned to battlegrounds, battlegrounds to silence, silence to peace. By hour 4, half the enemy forces were destroyed. By hour 5, the swarm was gone, retreating beyond the dark zones, deeper into space than anyone dared chase. Just like that, the war shifted. The council species stood in silence, watching the data feeds as Earth's fleets simply stopped in orbit. waiting for orders no one gave. The war wasn't over, not fully, but something had changed. Something big. And every species now knew one thing they would never forget. Humanity had entered the war late, but ended it in 5 hours. The council chambers were filled with silence. Dozens of species sat in their places, but none spoke. Holograms floated above the round table, showing battlefield data and footage. All showed the same thing, human warships cutting through the swarm like they were paper. Planets saved, systems cleared, enemies gone. Ambassador Rixel of the Andari leaned forward, his 4 eyes blinking slowly. "Are we witnessing there true power?" he whispered. His voice wasn't loud, but everyone heard it. No one answered. They didn't have to. The footage answered for them. No other species had ever done this. Not in days, not even in weeks. But humans had done it in 5 hours. General Thoric stood near the edge of the chamber, arms crossed. He had not spoken much since the humans arrived. Part of him felt relief. Another part felt something colder, fear. If humans could defeat the swarm so quickly, what else were they capable of? And why had they waited so long to act? The main doors opened with a hiss, and in walked the first human envoy anyone had seen in person. Tall, calm, armored in black and blue, the man's eyes scanned the room like he already knew every secret it held. He walked to the center without permission and spoke in a voice that carried weight. "My name is Commander Hayes. We've completed the sweep of the front lines. All swarm units have been neutralized within the mapped sectors. Remaining human forces are on standby." He didn't sit. He didn't bow. He didn't ask for thanks. His words were like orders, even though this wasn't his council. Ambassador Jorah, a feathered elder from the Zeleth, spoke first. "Why now?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why did you wait until we lost so much before stepping in?" It was the question every species wanted answered. Billions had died. Why had humanity stayed silent until now? Commander Hayes looked around the room. "Because you weren't ready," he said. "You fought for pride. You argued while your enemies grew stronger. We watched, we prepared. But until you asked, not with arrogance, but with need, we stayed away." His words hit hard. No one argued. No one dared. In truth, many council races had doubted humans. They were new to the stars after all. Latecomers to the great galactic community. But now those same critics sat frozen, humbled by the truth. Humanity had not only caught up, they had surpassed them. Thoric finally stepped forward. "What happens now?" he asked. "Will you stay and finish the job? Or will you vanish again into silence?" His voice held no challenge, only curiosity. The room leaned forward, waiting for Hayes' reply. "We do not seek to rule," Hayes said. "We protect our own. If you ask for help, we may give it. But Earth will never bow to this council. We are not here for politics. We are here to ensure survival." He paused, then added, "And to make sure the swarm never rises again." In orbit, the human fleet waited silently. Massive ships shaped like armored daggers drifted without movement. Some hovered over damaged council vessels, beaming down supplies without a word. No banners, no demands, just quiet action. It was unsettling but also powerful. On the ground, survivors of the swarm attacks began to return. Cities once reduced to rubble were now being rebuilt with human help. Machines moved with speed and precision. Human engineers worked side by side with alien crews. Where hope had died, now it began to return. But not everyone trusted the humans. On the outer rim, whispers began. What if they only help to gain control? What if they're the next threat? Fear mixed with gratitude like poison in clean water. And though no one said it out loud, the thought lived in every council chamber. Hayes returned to his ship later that day. As the door closed behind him, his second-in-command approached. "They're nervous," she said. "They fear us now." He nodded slowly. Good, he replied. Fear keeps them cautious. Caution keeps them alive. That's all we want. On the ship's screen, the last swarm hives drifted in deep space. Still alive, still dangerous, but now they weren't moving. They were hiding. Because something had changed, something big. The humans had come. And the galaxy would never be the same again. The war that had lasted decades had shifted in hours, not because of new weapons, but because of one decision. Humanity had entered the war and changed everything. Commander Hayes stood alone in the observation deck of his flagship, Valor class, Deliverance. Below, the half-burned planet of Solera slowly rotated, its atmosphere still stained with smoke from the swarm's last assault. But down there, people were alive. Thanks to human intervention, the cities were being rebuilt faster than anyone expected. He watched the surface without emotion. The swarm had been driven back, yes, but something in his gut told him this wasn't over. The silence of the enemy didn't feel like defeat. It felt like planning. The kind of stillness a hunter keeps before it pounces again. A low chime echoed. Behind him. It was Lieutenant Mira Voss, his second in command. Sir, she said, we've detected something unusual in the Vinner Belt. Scans show energy signatures, same as the swarm, but ... dormant. Her tone was controlled, but Hayes could hear the tension beneath her voice. Dormant doesn't mean dead, he replied. He turned and walked toward the command deck. Bring up full visuals. I want to see what they're hiding. Even before the display flickered to life, he knew this war wasn't done. 5 hours had been enough to crush the enemy's front, but not its core. On the screen, a dozen asteroids floated in cold space, but inside them were large black pods hive structures. The same ones they found near fallen worlds. This time, though the swarm wasn't moving, it was waiting, watching, studying. That's what bothered him most. In the council chambers, word of the swarm's retreat had brought celebration. Some species declared victory. Others proposed rebuilding projects and trade plans, but the humans didn't join those discussions. They kept their fleets stationed in outer systems. They never relaxed. General Thorak, now appointed head of Joint Defense, requested a private transmission with Hayes. When the line opened, Thorak's face looked older. Not from age, but from realization. You've seen them, haven't you? He asked. The dormant hives. Hayes nodded. They're not beaten. They're adapting. The alien general leaned forward. What do you propose? It was strange hearing those words. For months, Thorak had commanded the entire council fleet. Now he asked a human for direction. But there was no pride in Hayes' reply, only urgency. We strike now, before they wake. Before they evolve. Hayes paced the deck slowly. We can't allow them to learn from our weapons. If they do, the next war won't last 5 hours. It will last forever. Mira nodded quietly. Everyone on the ship already knew this. Back in the council, disagreements spread like fire. Some leaders refused to support another campaign. We've already lost millions, cried the Varn representative. Why poke the beast when it's finally gone? Others, especially those whose planets had nearly fallen, supported the humans fully. The humans didn't wait. While the council debated, Earth's fleets prepared. Carriers loaded stealth drones. Warships activated new weapons, ones that hadn't been seen in the first wave. Quietly, without asking, they moved toward the Vinner Belt. The operation had a single name, Ashfall. At the edge of the belt, the swarm hives began to pulse. Energy signatures rose. It was no longer dormant. The swarm had noticed them. But it was too late. In less than 2 minutes, over 500 human missiles entered the field, each programmed with adaptive AI and swarm-seeking warheads. The explosion wasn't loud in space, but the light was blinding. One by one, the asteroids cracked open, revealing half-grown swarm beasts still in hibernation. Some tried to activate. None survived. The entire field became a graveyard of black shells and burning debris. From orbit, Mira watched it unfold. That was their second wave, she said softly. They were going to come back stronger. Hayes said nothing. He just stared as his fleet began to return. No cheers, no flags. Just silence and success. That was the human way. Back on Earth, the news spread fast. For the first time in human history, a global broadcast from the Interstellar Council praised Earth. But humanity didn't celebrate. They reinforced their stations, rebuilt weapons, trained harder, because they knew something the Council didn't. The swarm had adapted before, and it would again. Victory was not the end. It was only a pause. Asterisk. The destroyed hives in the Vinner Belt left more than just debris. Among the fragments, human scouts found something strange, metal shards that didn't match swarm biology. They were smooth, reflective, and marked with tiny geometric patterns. These weren't organic, they were artificial. And they weren't human-made. On board the Deliverance, Commander Hayes examined one under magnification. "This isn't swarm tech," he said. "It's something else, a different design. Possibly a controller." Lieutenant Mira frowned. "You mean someone might be commanding the swarm from behind the scenes?" Hayes didn't answer, but the silence in the room spoke louder than words. Across the galaxy, survivors tried to move on. Markets reopened. Families returned to rebuild homes. Council worlds broadcast messages of peace. But in the shadows of diplomacy, the humans kept digging. Data from hundreds of swarm battlefields was reanalyzed. And a pattern emerged, one that no one noticed before. The swarm only changed tactics after major victories. They didn't evolve randomly. They adjusted exactly when they needed to, not like a hive mind. More like soldiers taking orders. Hayes stared at the reports, line after line. "This was never a wild species," he muttered. "This was a weapon. Built, tested, unleashed." On the far side of the rim, a listening post picked up a faint signal. Just static at first. But then a pulse repeated in a rhythmic pattern binary code. After translation, it said one thing: "We see you now." The signal wasn't from a swarm source. It was from something else, distant, cold, and vast. Commander Hayes shared the data with Thoric and the Council's Science Division. "This proves they weren't acting alone," he said. "Someone or something was watching us through them." Many in the Council dismissed it as coincidence. Others, more fearful, began to panic quietly. The Council didn't want another war, but Earth had already begun to prepare. Hayes ordered recon units beyond the known edges of the swarm's territory. Small ships, cloaked in silence, went to search for the source. Weeks passed. One didn't return. When the second probe made it back, it brought with it blurry footage of a structure floating in deep space. Not a ship, not a station. Something larger, alien in design. Dark, like obsidian carved into sharp towers. And surrounding it were hundreds of dormant swarm units, perfectly still like statues. Hayes stood with Mira, reviewing the footage frame by frame. "This isn't a base," she whispered. "It's a factory." He nodded. "They've been building more." Quietly, outside our maps, out of sight, his eyes narrowed. They never lost. They were just testing. U.S. On Earth, the United Fleet Command met in silence. It wasn't just war they faced now, it was extermination. The swarm was only a first stage. Whatever was behind them didn't want peace. It wanted control, total dominance. And it was patient. Hayes requested permission to lead a preemptive strike on the structure. Not just to observe, but to destroy it completely. Many in the Council hesitated. But Earth didn't wait for votes. Within 3 days, the human fleet moved. Quietly, efficiently, with one target. As the fleet entered the dark sector, strange readings started to appear. Time delays, spatial distortions, power fluctuations. The air inside the ships became heavier, like something massive was watching from every direction. But they pressed forward. Then, without warning, the structure activated. Swarm units turned toward them, lit with eerie green light. From the center of the tower, a beam of energy fired, shattering one of the human escort ships instantly. The humans responded with fury. Rail cannons fired, shockwave torpedoes launched. No hesitation. The battle that followed was unlike anything seen before. It wasn't just speed or power, it was precision. The structure fought back intelligently, targeting command bridges and communication links, but the humans adapted. Mid-combat, AI protocols adjusted tactics in seconds. No alien fleet in history had fought like this. Finally, the structure's core began to collapse. A massive shock pulse surged through space as it imploded. The swarm units froze mid-motion, like puppets with their strings cut. The human fleet retreated just in time. Behind them, the structure turned into a silent black cloud dust among stars. Back on the Deliverance, Hayes watched the cloud drift. "That wasn't their only one," he said. "There are more. Maybe hundreds, maybe worse." Mira nodded. "Then we find them all." Their mission had changed. The war wasn't over. It had just shifted from defense to the hunt. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but a new kind of war had begun. One not against species, but against shadows. Deep in space, beyond the edge of any charted map, the human fleet moved like silent ghosts. No signals, no broadcasts. Every engine was silent mode. These ships were not meant to defend, they were meant to hunt. And humanity had found a reason to never stop. After the destruction of the swarm's hidden factory, dozens of similar energy signatures were found across the outer zones. Hayes knew now that the swarm was only one layer. Something else smarter, older had built them. These weren't just enemies. They were manufactured weapons. And Earth had just stepped into the machine's heart. Inside the flagship Deliverance, Mira watched the strategy table update in real time. 5 more locations pinged with matching frequencies, she said. 3 show swarm activity. 2 are silent. Could be dormant structures again. Hayes leaned over the display, his jaw tight. "We hit the quiet ones first. We strike before they wake up." This was not how the Council fought. The Council waited, voted, reacted. Humanity didn't. They planned, acted, and finished. Every strike was fast and exact. Entire swarm fields were burned before the Council could even finish meetings. It was brutal but effective. Some called them reckless. Others called them necessary. Back on the Council homeworld, Ambassador Jorah stood in front of the gathered leaders. "The humans are not following protocol," she warned. "They strike without permission. They enter borders uninvited." But Thorok stood and cut her off. "And yet, we are alive because of them. Shall we die in perfect order?" That ended the argument. Quietly, several Council races began sending data to Earth in secret. Routes, codes, swarm reports. Some didn't admit it publicly, but they trusted humans more than their own leaders. The galaxy had changed, and not everyone liked it. One mission changed everything. A stealth unit from Earth went dark near an old star cluster. When the rescue team arrived, they found no swarm, but something else. A station the size of a moon, hidden behind a gas cloud. And on it, a message burned into the hull in human English. "You were never meant to survive." Hayes stared at the image from the briefing room. No one knew who wrote it, or how they used human language. But it confirmed his fears. This wasn't just war. It was design, a long plan. And humans had disrupted it too early. Inside the station, drones found old remains, not swarm. Not Council species, something else. Fossilized, strange with long skulls and armor fused to bone. These weren't victims, they were prototypes. Failed versions of swarm creatures. This was a lab. We're not fighting a species, Hayes said. We're fighting an architect. Mira looked up from the report. You think they're still out there? He nodded once. Something still writes the plans. The swarm aren't soldiers, they're tools. There's a hand behind them. The data retrieved from the station revealed coordinates, an origin point deep in the starless regions of the void. A place with no name, no light, and no return signals. It was far beyond where any species dared to map. But that's where the humans aimed next. Council members demanded delay. Too far, they said. Too dangerous. We must study before we leap. But Earth ignored them. The next fleet was already being prepared. It wasn't just military anymore. Scientists, strategists, and high architects were joining. This wasn't only a war, it was now a mission to uncover truth. As the fleet neared the void edge, strange things began to happen. Instruments showed systems that didn't exist. Shadows appeared where there were no ships. One vessel even reported hearing voices, perfect copies of missing crew members. It was more than fear. It was manipulation. They're testing our minds now, Mira whispered. Not just our strength. Hayes stood firm. Then we hold the line with both. Orders were given. Every ship locked into strict communication protocols. No one trusted what they saw unless confirmed twice. Even AI systems were given restrictions. When they finally reached the origin point, there was no star. Just a black sphere the size of a planet, floating in nothing. It didn't glow. It didn't pulse. But every scanner said the same thing. It was alive. Hayes gave one order, and the fleet prepared their most powerful weapon. The Soul Hammer, a weapon powered by a compressed star core, was launched directly at the sphere. As it neared, the sphere cracked open, revealing not machines, but something worse. Memories. Everyone on the fleet saw something different, past mistakes. Lost loved ones, regrets. The sphere was alive and it spoke through guilt. But the hammer hit before it could fully react. The explosion turned the sphere inside out. For 1 second, the stars themselves bent. Then silence returned. The fleet remained, scarred but alive. The architect's core was gone. The swarm stopped moving across the galaxy. In that moment, every council world knew the truth. The war hadn't ended in 5 hours. It had only begun with 5 hours. And it was humanity who had the courage to finish. What others feared to start, asterisk black sphere was gone. Where once it had floated like a silent god, there was now only a twisting field of stardust and light. The shockwave from the Soul Hammer had broken every known rule of energy, warping gravity and silence alike. Yet somehow, the human fleet stood unharmed at the edge of the impossible. Commander Hayes sat in the command chair of the Deliverance, staring at the broken space where the architect had lived. All sensors were quiet. No more swarm signals, no movement. No threats, but he didn't smile. He only sat there still as stone. It's too quiet, he said. They wanted us to find that thing. It was too easy. Myra stood beside him, holding a tablet filled with post-strike data. Every swarm signal in the galaxy shut down after the detonation, she said. It's over, Commander. He looked at her with tired eyes. Then why doesn't it feel over? His words carried a weight that made the entire bridge fall into silence. Back on Earth, the Council broadcasted victory. Monuments were planned. A galactic holiday was proposed. And for the first time in years, no one died in the swarm attack. Children played in the open. Flags waved. News feeds called humanity the saviors of the stars. But on the outer edges of the Terran intelligence network, a message had arrived. Encrypted. Untraceable. Short. Just 5 words. You've only seen the tools. No one knew where it came from. The location data was corrupted. The language used, English. Not translated, written by design. When Hayes saw it, he ordered silence. No press, no council alert. Just a quiet briefing between key Earth commanders and select allies from trusted council races. This was never just about the swarm, he explained. Someone built them. Someone still watches. And if they spoke our language, they knew us before we knew them. General Thoric attended remotely. He no longer questioned Hayes. The galaxy had changed too fast to rely on the old ways. So what do we do? He asked. Hayes didn't hesitate. We prepare Earth for something bigger. We build not just for war, but for revelation. Mira added, if this was just a test, then we were the test subject. And so it began. The next phase of Earth's mission, not invasion, not conquest, but search, beneath every planet scanned, behind every ancient ruin, deep inside old black holes. Humanity started to dig not with bombs, but with questions. The swarm had been a riddle. The real answer still waited in the dark. Years passed, peace held. But human fleets never stood down. Every ship remained armed. Every colony remained trained. Children were taught swarm history like others learned the alphabet. And in quiet corners of Earth, researchers studied the message over and over again. You've only seen the tools. It haunted them. Who was the user? Where were they now? And what else had they made? More than one scientist believed Earth was next, not for war, but for transformation. Others thought humans were chosen for something ancient. Either way, no one forgot. One night, as the stars shone bright over the Pacific sky, Hayes stood on a cliff edge with Mira at his side. They watched a Terran defense satellite blink in the distance. Do you think they're still out there? She asked, watching. He nodded once. Yes, and now they know we're not afraid. Myra smiled softly. We ended a war in 5 hours. That was the start, not the end. He looked up, voice steady. Then let the stars remember us for what we are. Not conquerors, not victims, but the answer no one expected. In time, the galaxy would forget the swarm's scream. But it would never forget the day they fell silent. Not by a great alliance, not by ancient power, but by the arrival of one late angry species, humanity.